They always need more.
I want to explain something about this whole, there's a great deal of debt buying going around in Europe especially, and a lot of people are asking or wondering, what does that do? Now, the thing is that the banks are buying it because the idea is to bankrupt nations. It's not to save the world from destruction. It's actually to destroy the nations. This is the old Venetian game in having your adversary go so far in debt to you that you control the adversary. You see, the banks themselves are buying debt, which is worthless. But many of these banks are not intended to survive, which is the case with a lot of banks in Spain, which has literally have been downgraded to junk status. Now, if you take the oligarchy at its word, the empire says they want to reduce the population to 1 billion people on this planet, which means that huge sections of the banking system, huge sections of national economies, huge sections of the population, they're gonna go. So this system is never coming back. And this is what this bailout really is. In trying to save this money, which is really virtual money, it doesn't exist. The debt can never be paid. The derivatives, they have absolutely no value. It's all a sham. It's like monopoly money. But in trying to save that, what we're doing is destroying ourselves, destroying the nations, destroying the country.
Let me ask you this. Why does Bilderberg want a post-industrial world? Why do they want to reduce the population? Because they're meeting right now in Rio, and they're saying they want a post-industrial world. And here's AFP, women march in Rio to protest a green economy because it's not really a green economy. Why is Bilderberg so obsessed with reducing population and wrecking economies, Daniel Estulin?
Well, Alex, again, it goes back to the, we're living on a very small planet of 7 billion people with limited natural resources. In a generation, we're going to get to 10, 11 billion, 15, 20, 40. It's going to get to the point there's simply not enough food or water on the planet for everyone. And so for people like Rockefeller, which is just a euphemism for powerful people, to survive, for the elite, most of us have to disappear because, again, this is something that, the Rouge people have been saying for a long time. This is something that, the circles of Gottfried Leibniz over 250 years ago, realized and knew that progress and development is directly proportional to population density. So if you want to progress, if you want to have more people on the planet, you have to have the technological levels to be able to sustain the life of lives of these billions of people. On the other hand, if you want to destroy the population base, undermine it, and wipe most of us out, what you need to do is destroy demand, destroy production, and that's why we so often see phrases such as zero growth, post-industrial age, as you said. You and I talked about this after the 2006 Bilderberg meeting in Canada, in Ottawa, in Canada, when we were working on the Endgame documentary, and you were interviewing me for that documentary. We were talking about it. So if people haven't seen Endgame, go back and see what Alex Jones did back in 2006 so that people can understand that this isn't some nonsense from a conspiracy freak. This is real. And what they're doing is they're destroying nation-state republics and creating this world company limited, a concept which was first brought up at the 1968 Bilderberg Conference in Canada by none other than George Ball of Lehman Brothers, who announced the project to build this world company. And the idea is that nation-states at the time, this is 1968, they're outmoded, they're an archaic form of government. In a Malthusian world, they can't be relied on. They tend to believe that the resources in their countries, most countries, belong to the people who run the world, the Rockefellers and company. And so what they've done, in order to control the natural resources, they created a new form of government that decided in a corporation. So that's what the World Corporation is.
That's right, and you don't have a vote in it. That's why in the 1974 network, they call Howard Beale in and explain it all to him. When we come back, I want to continue with the latest info you've got from inside Bilderberg, Daniel Estulin, DanielEstulin.com. We'll also look at all the military battle lines being drawn right now. I'm not trying to toot our guest horn, but he really has had a dramatic effect on the landscape and has amazing sources. Vanity Fair, the Wall Street Journal of Italy, you name it, have pointed out just recently that he's one of the top researchers in this area. And of course, a few years ago, I'll ask him about this before he leaves us at the end of the hour, Fidel Castro invited him to Cuba. And again, regardless of what you think of Castro's political bent, here is Fidel Castro, in fact, a photo on screen, inviting Daniel Estulin, whose books he reads, to Cuba. And, so it just shows that, he knows who runs the world, these banksters. So we'll be talking more with Daniel about that. This is a short segment, Daniel. I wanted to get into what's happening geopolitically, because the world is obviously, as it economically collapses by design to consolidate, it's militarily, the battle lines are being drawn. I mean, Russia, it's not even really in our news, but it's all over European news, as you know, has said 3 times the last 2 months, Medvedev and Putin, we will nuke you if you keep moving missiles in. Now they're sending Spetsnaz, special forces, and a Marine Spetsnaz, and ships into Syria, all sorts of high-tech weapons. This is getting crazy. Daniel, what is your Bilderberg sources telling you on these fronts?
Well, the biggest Bilderberg's top headache into foreseeable future continues to be Putin, and that's something that they've all agreed on. Key areas of concern for the secretive organization is Russia's opposition to war in Syria and Iran, be they spun as humanitarian bombing or colored revolutions. Now, of particular concern for Bilderberg is Russia's insistence on maintaining state sovereignty intact. That's something that Putin has mentioned quite a few times, and that's something that the American media, at least, has completely eliminated from their discourse. Now, another concern for Bilderberg is how exactly to deal with Russia's quote-unquote belligerence, as one of the Bilderbergers put it, with respect to, number one, the U.S. bases encircling Russia, and number two, missile defense pointing its warheads at Moscow. Now, as far as Syria is concerned, Bilderberg agreed that the country's presence in the Mediterranean is of great concern to NATO and the United States, and to Bilderberg, who would dearly wish to remove Russia's navy from the Syrian port of Tartus. Now, but as one European Bilderberger security expert commented, of far greater concern is Putin's emphasis on Eurasia integration. Now, Putin's idea is coordinating a powerful supranational union between Europe and the dynamic Asia-Pacific region. Now, one positive for Bilderberg, as far as Russia's position on Syria is concerned, is that Putin's options to oppose regime change in Syria are fraught with danger. The Bilderbergs agreed that an inflexible pro-Assad position could leave Russia out of many international future understandings for Syria. And I quote from one of the Bilderbergs, they said, Russia was completely left out of Libya, and they won't want to risk being shut out of Syria as well, said one high-ranking U.S. diplomat attending the Bilderberg conference. Now, Bilderberg is convinced that Putin would rather share Syria with the United States and the European Union and have a say in the country's future direction than try to oppose it too much for too long. That's why Russia's position is not as powerful as a lot of people believe, but as you said, Russia is certainly flexing its military muscle, getting the Spetsnaz, which are the special forces, into Syria. Tarpley talked about that as well. My sources are saying this as well, and what you said, Alex, is absolutely correct.
Incredible. Shifting gears, and I've got Aaron Dyke, since you mentioned it earlier, trying to find it. It's almost a 3-hour film. In 2006, almost 2 years before the housing collapse began, and no one was talking about it, your sources said that in that meeting, because I talked to you that night right after it had ended, you hadn't had any sleep in over 2 days because you'd flown in from Spain, that, and it's in Endgame, that they were going to implode the housing market and begin a recession that would lead to global depression, the derivatives, the imploding economy, Europe, then the United States. I mean, you lay it all out in Endgame, and there it is. All these crises that they act like are just now starting and the globalists have a solution to them, we have them on record engineering them.
Well, that's right. That's one of the reasons why we get the Wall Street Italy, which is not exactly a slouch, giving me front page coverage, an entire page, talking about my 2012 Bilderberg report, and saying, as you just mentioned, one of the few people who actually got the inside information from the people at the meeting. These are people who are very, very serious about what's going on. And again, Bilderberg has a lot of opposition within the group, and also people who actually work for mainstream media, who understand what's going on, who don't want to see their countries wiped out, as, for example, right now we're seeing with Italy, now as Nigel Farage mentioned in the European Parliament in Strasbourg, now to save Spanish banks, Italy is being forced to lend money at 3%.
I'll tell you what, long segments, sorry to interrupt, long segments, stay there. Tell us about opposition to Bilderberg, inside, a lot more. What's happening in Italy? Back in just a few minutes. Okay, we did dig out the clip. This is from Endgame, Blueprint for Global Enslavement. I also then updated it in my Obama deception film of almost 4 years ago. And this is Daniel Estulin in the hotel lounge at around 11 o'clock at night with Jim Tucker as they're exchanging notes from their sources. I mean, this just shows the power the Bilderberg Group has. Are they the absolute rulers? No, but they're as high as it gets in this Atlantic, European, U.S., England alliance, but not of our countries, of the global bankers that have hijacked us and conquered us and are trying to leverage our military, our tax money, our science against the rest of the world. Does that mean Russia and China are good guys? No. It simply means that we are under the control of the most vicious group who want total extermination. I mean, Putin pays people to get married and have kids. Here, they don't want you to. Again, it's a different group. And again, the Chinese, the Russians, they're not the ones taking over the U.S. The Chinese are to a certain extent. They're allied with the globalist more. But I'll get Daniel's sources on that and see if he agrees with that statement. We're going to get into what he was saying in Europe and then in the military situation in a moment, where he left off in Italy. But first, here's that clip from Endgame, Blueprint for Global Enslavement. By the way, it's free online if you want to watch it. It's a very important film. Here it is.
Well, one of the things that we're getting from this morning's conference. This morning conference was about the energy crisis, the price of oil. The afternoon conference, which started about 4 o'clock, 4:30. They were talking about one of the American delegates. I wasn't told who exactly it was talking about the concern that the American citizens have had with the housing prices going down, so they're not investing that money. So what they needed to do is they needed to create the illusion that everything is going well. So what they're going to do over the next year and a half is to bring the market back up to 1998, 1999 levels. They're going to get all the suckers to invest whatever little money they have left over, and that's when they're going to make the economy bottom drop out. They need to destroy the economy because as we're running out of oil, when people don't travel, at least that's what they're saying, when people don't travel, when people don't have money, they don't travel, they don't spend any money, which means you don't waste a lot of oil and natural gas. That's the afternoon.
So how does this source, just ballpark, so you have the sources.
Well, actually, there are two people who are members of the Bilderberg Group.
Okay, that's good.
They're members of the Bilderberg Group.
And again, that's a really bad internet clip, just the first one we could find. There's higher quality ones available online of Endgame, Blueprint for Global Enslavement, or get the DVD at Infowars.com. But there is that clip, and you go on repeatedly in the film to just predict everything that's going to unfold. Let's continue now. Tell us what they're planning now to do to the economy. You had left off with the fact that there's people within Bilderberg that don't like what's happening, and that a lot of the nationalistic structures that are left are finally realizing that the New World Order is going to destroy their countries. Please continue.
I want to mention, just comment on what you said about the Chinese taking over the United States. One of the key conclusions from the Bilderberg meeting is that the United States will manipulate the fall of the U.S. dollar in value against the Chinese yuan. Now, the thinking behind is that a devalued dollar will inflate away America's debts and its obligations. Now, Bilderberg is not particularly concerned about the people of the United States, and obviously they're going to use them as guinea pigs in this entire experiment. What, of course, is being sacrificed is the purchasing power of the American dollar. It's all part of the deal with Beijing to help Washington inflate away its debts and give China more say in the global economy. Now, if you look at the actual